And what is up? Welcome back. It's ChrisP from the Average Boys Podcast, and I am here at the CineSol Film Race and Festival here at the CEED Event Center, and I am here with the legendary actor, Victor Rivers. Victor, how are you doing, man?
I'm doing great. I'm just, enjoying my time down here, and I've had lots of opportunities to visit Texas, so I really enjoy my time here.
So, Victor, tell us a little bit about yourself. Of course, you're well known here in our community in the South Texas area. We are very Chicano based, and we're very street based, and you are like a local super big celebrity when it comes to the Blood In Blood Out.
Blood In Blood Out, and my character, I always laugh because I tell people that I'm the original Magic Mike.
Yes, you are.
and my guy doesn't dance. So, but yeah, no, it's I've done many films and projects over the years, but I would just say that as far as the following that this film has, that it's now three
huge.
generations old, going on 4. It will next year will be its 30th anniversary that the film came out, and I just I'm always amazed at the fan base, and yes, it is Latino, it is Chicano, but I can also tell you it's around the world. So I get emails from South Africa. Japan has a huge lowrider culture.
Do you know what? I have been so floored by that. There is a really cool lowrider Chicano movement in like the Asian area where you'll see, like, I think I got introduced to it like 8 years ago with Thailand. Thailand has like a huge, everybody looks like just like, my uncle Juanito down the street kind of position. Yeah. And it's so crazy. And then of course, like I mean, since I follow that kind of genre on Instagram and Facebook, I get recommended, and I ended up finding a norteño band in Japan that now I follow and I listen to their music, and it's so crazy. It's so crazy how well and how appreciated the culture of like the Latino is around the world. Tell us more about it though, like in the sense of like I did some research on you when it came to this film. Of course, when I was younger and I saw the film, I of course looked at it and I was like, oh dude, that's like, me and my homies hanging out kind of thing. But I didn't know some of the situation that you and the actors were put through, like in the sense of like where you guys were actually filming in the prison, like with prisoners and things like that. Like, can you elaborate on that experience? And like, was there like a fear management or like, you gotta let me know, man.
It's a good question. So I'll just go to let you know that when they say San Quentin, we're in San Quentin. We're in the prison population. We're not protected or guarded. The warden in the movie is the warden. That's Daniel Vasquez read the script and said, "Who wrote this? This guy knows what he's talking about."
Wow.
So whenever you're in Ed Mero cell, Montana cell, his cellmate with the little mustache, that's Jimmy Santiago Baca. He's an award-winning Chicano poet.
The poet, right?
Taught himself to read and write in prison, in solitary confinement in the New Mexico prison system as a young person. So, that's the reason that we were allowed in a working prison.
Wow.
I will give you a couple of facts. San Quentin was originally built for 2,500 inmates. When we got there in 91, film came out in 93, we were filming in 91, there was 5,500 inmates in San Quentin.
Damn.
So everybody was on top of everybody, and every scene that you see, once you figure out who the actors are, both the Chicano, Billy Bob Thornton, and the Aryans, and then of course Delroy Lindo, who plays Bonafide. Once you figure out who the actors are, everybody you see in those scenes with us aren't extras; they're real convicts doing time. So the very first scene in the movie for us, for those filming in San Quentin, is that very first scene where you see Magic and he turns around. I'm the boogeyman and goes. That whole thing. That's the very first scene that we shot. They brought us in first, sat us at our tables, and then they brought in 1,000 inmates.
Oh wow!
And we had never met them before. There was no like introduction. Hey, these
Hey,
actors. No, we just went right to it. And so there was an incredible tension in the very first scene. And I would say that the only way that I realized it for myself to sort of protect myself in any of those scenes is Magic is the warlord of La Onda. So Magic's the guy you don't mess with. And so I was Magic 24/7 whenever I was on the set.
Yeah, you were straight to roll.
No one ever knew my real name. No one knew that my name was Victor. That nothing. I was Magic, and I would not come out of character until we left the prison.
Yeah.
So that I would be respected. I respected them because I was in their house.
Yes.
And I followed their rules, not the guards' rules or the warden's rules.
Yeah, the prisoners'
inmates'
rules. The inmates' rules.
And they respected us back, and of course we were also, by the way, the circus that came to town.
Oh, okay.
Because we gave them a diversion that
some type of entertainment, some type of difference
from their normal schedule. So, but I think as an actor, it became a great barometer for us because it was always, I could do a scene and I would turn around to my brown brothers, and many of them would be, behind their lokes and, their glasses, and they would just give me like a really small little nod.
Yeah. Like, you got it.
You got it.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. There was some confirmation.
Yeah. And so, what a lot of people don't know, because, as actors, we're given a responsibility to be as authentic as we can. Yeah. So a lot of times when people meet me now and in life, they realize, oh, you're not Chicano. You're not Mexican. So I'm actually Cuban by birth.
Okay.
But my job was to create an authentic character who was, from La Raza.
Yeah.
Who knew about, like if you look at my tats on my body, I'm covered in Aztec. Symbolism and so that was my job as an actor. And then again, and I could turn around in any scene, and I had the real magic's all around me.
Yeah, the actual life is there.
Yeah, and I could draw from them, and the only other thing I would say, and we can talk a little bit about that, is that when I walked around the prison in San Quentin, I went there but for the grace of God, because that was how I was heading as a young man. I was, a gang member for a very short period of time. I was brought up in violence, and that's all I knew. And I was fortunate that I had a community that saved me and redirected me.
When you in '91, when you were brought into this film, you had already been a part of the acting scene. You'd already done films, but like being in that moment there in San Quentin and being around people that had, I guess, fulfilled their journey in that life that you're talking about from your youth. Was it kind of like a reassuring thing that you were like, you know what, I made the right choice? Like, I'm glad my life didn't follow that way. Or was there some type of camaraderie where, like, while you were there, you felt like it was like a phantom pain? Like, you're like, you know what, like, this feels like something that, it feels comfortable, like here, but I know I shouldn't be here.
Well, here's what I will tell you, that every single guy that I talked to in San Quentin had family violence in his background. So that's what I grew up in. I grew up in really horrific family violence. And what it really made me realize is two things. We spent 5 weeks pretty much every day from 12 to 14 hours a day in San Quentin. And what I saw, my observations back in '91, is that there's no rehabilitation in prison to speak of. You're not going to get better in most prison situations. So what I was, in my own personal journey, I was given so much help and so much support as a young person. I was a gang member for a very short amount of time. There were no guns in my gang life, which in that era. So fortunately nobody died, or I didn't get seriously wounded or anything like that. But I was carrying a lot of anger, a lot of violence with me. What I realized more than anything is that it made me become such a proponent to engaging our communities and giving our kids more options like I was given. So, and I'll use the example. Whenever we cut our budgets in our schools, the first thing that we cut are the free music and the arts and the dance and any of the programs that might give kids like me an opportunity. To feel like a champion and a winner, where maybe that message isn't being sent, especially maybe at home.
Well, I mean, not only that, it gives a student an opportunity. I was in band a lot of my life, and then I ran track and wrestling. I do martial arts. I've had all these nice opportunities to have some type of outreach to get my situations out. The thing is when you're allowed it in school, especially in public school, like, even if you don't have money, the school still supplies you with most of your equipment. And some of that stuff that childs can't even afford at their houses to even get into those type of hobbies. So that's super sad that's the first thing that school districts end up cutting out, which is this really great opportunity for kids to at least get some type of like a opportunity to do something outside.
And here's here's how I give, when I speak to members of Congress, because over the years I've been in D.C. a lot, I've been at the White House a few times, and I always say, it's really interesting that, we don't have the money, the budgets for those things. But we seem to find billions and billions of dollars to build more and more state-of-the-art prisons to incarcerate primarily black and brown
people,
minorities, and certainly in our country. And here's what I know: my son, who's now 28, but my son went to Harvard.
Oh, yeah.
And so had I been paying full tuition at Harvard, it would have been $65,000 a year. To incarcerate a male in our prison system can be upwards of 65 or higher. To incarcerate a youth in the prison system, in that system, is around $100,000 because of counseling and everything else that you add to that. So we're going to pay for it, one way or the other. Now, where do you think the better results are going to come? If we invested before they get to the prisons, the system, or get caught up in that, or they get that big sign over their head that says ex-felon or convict or whatever you want to have, and then they're going to, even if they try to redirect their lives, a lot of times, like Blood and Blood Out, they come out and then they can't, they can't do anything.
It's rough, yeah.
And then they go back, the recidivism, that's why they end up back in prison, because it's maybe something that they know. It's just easier, if you want to believe that. They call it 3 hots and a cot or whatever.
Yeah.
But again, as a society, if we make the investment before they get there, we're not going to save all those kids, but you're going to save a lot of kids like me.
Yeah, but it's still some type of deterrent to slow down or cause that factor to have some disruption, so you can apply more effort into it. Slowing down because like you said, like when you guys went to go film at San Quentin, San Quentin had only been established for a certain amount of head for room for people, and they had already quadrupled the number of people that were in the prison, and that's still to this day probably still going on, where a lot of prisons are overpopulated, and that money is still going into those prisons.
So here's what and this is just a kind of an interesting fact. When we were in San Quentin in '91, it was considered the most notorious prison in the state of California at the time. Today, it's considered the most rehabilitative prison in the state. So if you want to get rehabilitated, you go to San Quentin. And I don't know if that's one, because San Francisco is nearby, and there's a lot of liberal sort of
people loving people.
But I also wonder if the exposure from the film
open some eyes.
What it was, and so people wanted, to try to make a difference. So what they're teaching a lot in San Quentin, besides, some of, education and whatever, but they're also teaching entrepreneurial skills. The reason why is because so the inmates coming out can start their own businesses.
They can start their own business, because it's so much rougher for them to become part of the workforce, because a lot of people don't want to hire ex-cons, right? So the idea is teach them to be their own bosses, and then they don't have to worry about that. So that's actually very important. But that's an important role right now. I mean, across the board, entrepreneurship in the last 2 years, 3 years has been one of the leading factors. Everybody wants to have that side hustle, be making that extra $1 million or whatever in their bank account, cryptocurrency or whatever it is nowadays that everybody's doing. So that's very well to hear. That's very good to hear that San Quentin's actually.
So there's been a change, but I can tell you, in '91 it was intense, and but again, I think that's an experience that I think a lot of us as actors, took away and maybe changed, the way we look at things, or and even as actors, like when people say, well, what's your favorite role? And I've done a lot of films, but I would say as an actor, there's nothing like a full immersion.
Yes.
And so we had, you couldn't help but be fully immersed. In San Quentin. So I think that's why that film has, it still is significant. It still feels real. One of the things that a lot of people don't know is that prior to filming, and I'm talking about the 3 leads, the Miklo, Crucito, and Paco, the director, Taylor Hackford, moved Damien, Jesse, and Benjamin Bratt into an apartment in Boyle Heights. And that's in East LA. And that's where El Pino is, where the Pine is. And moved them into the middle of the barrio and they had a former gang member as their sort of
their liaison.
Their liaison to the neighborhood. And they said they heard gunshots every night.
I was going to say, man.
Thrust them into that world so that by the time they got to filming, they were a little bit more hardened and more in sync with the reality and the rhythm of the neighborhood.
That culture, the culture of that environment.
Because they were all coming from different places. Some of the actors in the film are puro Chicano, but there are actors that aren't. Benjamin is not. He's got Peruvian background. I'm Cuban. Popeye, Carlos Carrasco
Yeah.
is Panamanian.
Oh, okay.
You know, and so everybody, you know, like we had to sort of bring in, you know, and you know, sort of meld into the characters and into the rhythm of what it means to be part of that culture for many of us. And but again, I think just you know, the full immersion that film created for all of us, and
Life changing.
yeah, even the boys, even the, you know, the young guys,
The younger
film.
ones.
Yeah.
I have to ask, with the whole entire aspect with the Blood In, Blood Out movie, and you being placed in a prison with actual inmates and stuff like that, you know, later on in your life, you know, years past the movie, have you ever been reintroduced to someone that had been around you, like in that film? Maybe that was a prisoner or that the ex-con that rehabilitated himself, came out and was like, hey man, that experience, you know, you guys making that film, you know, it made me see my life in a different way, and I've changed and stuff like that. Like, have you ever ran into people like?
Well, that's actually, it's a good question. So like, because we were in San Quentin for as long as we were, as we were in there, there were certain inmates that were going to be paroled.
Yeah.
So I will tell you that, and these are always, you know, stories of people trying to make a difference. So Taylor Hackford, the director, there was 2 or 3 inmates. 2 of them were from the Aryan Brotherhood, and one was you know, Chicano. He got them jobs as painters on movie sets.
Very cool. Very
They
cool.
came out, so that a lot of people don't know that. But what I will say is, over the years, I've heard from people who their uncle, their dad was
in the film?
They were in San Quentin, and they were in our scenes.
Yeah, yeah.
So you know, that, you know, like, I thought that was, you know, really interesting that they, you know, and you know, some of them, you know, actually got out, but you know, some didn't. I know that Danny Trejo, that's where he did his time.
Yeah.
So when we got off the bus the very first day in San Quentin, because we all come in together, we all leave together. We don't come in shifts. You know, we're like, you know, when Danny got off the bus the first day, there was, I mean, at least 5 or 6. Hey, Danny.
They already knew my name.
Yeah,
they knew my name.
Yeah. Because
that's wild.
Danny was, you know, I think Danny was the middleweight boxing champion in San Quentin, so he was pretty well known.
Yeah, he was really well known.
You know, it was just interesting to see, you know, like how easily Danny found it. You know, he had no trouble sort of going back in, where the writer did, Jimmy Santiago Baca, you know, being kind of brought back into the system. Even though it wasn't, you know, New Mexico was his system, it didn't matter. It was like, you know, like, I know he liked to stay, you know, in his writing trailer and just, you know, continue to write. He would come out to do the scenes, but, you know, where the rest of us were, you know, we were in a full immersion all day long. We didn't have, you know, we didn't go back to our trailers. Yeah. You know, the only trailers in the prison yard were the wardrobe and makeup and hair.
Yeah, I think it was your makeup, right, where you were doing your like tattoos and stuff?
My tattoos are, you know, like, my tattoos would last about 2.5 days, and then by the 3rd day they start to bleed. Okay. And so then if they had to start from scratch with me and I was shirtless in the scene, it would be 3 hours in a chair. You know, because I had front and back and, you know, whatever. But if it was just arms, you know, if it was just my, you know, like,
just a sleeve or like,
sleeves, then, you know, it would be about 90 minutes.
Okay. So. Not too bad. Tell me about, okay, so earlier you mentioned about trauma and things that you went through as a child. Do you want to kind of elaborate that on a little bit more? Because I know that you have a book that you wrote, you know, it came out a couple of years ago. Yeah.
So, I mean, I have a book. It's actually been out since, came out in hardcover in 2005, paperback in 2006. It's out of Simon & Schuster. And interesting how small a world is. So the actual imprint of Simon & Schuster is called Atria Books. Danny Trejo has a new book called Trail.
Oh, okay.
It's the same. We have the same publisher.
Oh, okay.
So it's Atria Books.
Very cool.
But it's Simon. Cool. It's, you know, Simon Schuster is the big company out of New York, and my book is called A Private Family Matter, and the title comes from when I was 12 years old. We had the police at our house many times, you know, because my father was abusive to all of us, but especially to my mom, and they would come to the house, and they would never arrest him. And the very last time they came to my house, right before I did what I'm going to describe now, is they came to the house and they told my father, because they were, of course, everybody was a male cop back then. Back in my, you know, I'm 67, so in case your audience doesn't know how old I am.
You look fantastic.
Thank you. But the male cops, the last time they were at our house, one of the male cops told my father, "You need to keep your woman in line." So they gave him like this license. So at 12, I walked into my city's police department in Los Angeles, and I took my clothes off in a room so that they could see my body, because he made sure not to hit us or
in the
mark
face,
us, where you could see it. And they were horrified at what they saw on me. And I pleaded with them, and I said, please go to my house and arrest them and get them out of there for good. And they said, what we can do is have you sign a formal complaint. We'll put you in a police car and we'll drive you back to talk to your dad. And I said, if you do that and you don't arrest him when you leave, he's going to kill me.
He's going to kill me.
And they said there's nothing more that they could do, that it's a private family matter. And that's the name of my book.
That's horrible, man.
And so that was life for me up until I was 15. And I was finally, I think I had just had it with that behavior, and I felt like I was going to become him if I didn't alter the behavior. And then there was a day where he was about to attack one of my younger siblings, and I stood up to him, and I took him on physically, and I won, and I realized that here was a man that I had absolutely terrified my whole family, was now cowering and crying beneath me, But at the same moment, I took no glee in that, because all I ever wanted was for him to love me.
Yeah,
my father. But that was the day that I left. I ran away from home because I had just changed the dynamics in the house, and I realized, he left the house right after the fight, and I realized why did he leave? And I figured he might be going out to get a gun because I didn't have one in the home, and so I ran. I ran and I ran. I ended up on the streets for several days, and until a high school classmate of mine spotted me, and that I barely knew, but took me home. And his dad was a lawyer, and I took my dad to court, and I got what they called it a peace bond. It was a restraining order. Yeah. At 15, Jeez. And so I got my freedom, but I had really nowhere to go, and that's where my high school steps in, and I was 6'2" already, 200 pounds, angry.
You're a big gentleman.
Gang member, whatever. And there's this transformation that goes on in the last 2.5 years of high school. I went from this violent member of a street gang, homicidal, suicidal kid, to president of the school, scholarship athlete. I was involved in lots of different groups.
What was it that got you to change? What was it like? What was it that pushed you into the positive nature? People just, one, giving me the opportunity, two, telling me, maybe for the first time in my life, wow, you really did that well. Whatever it might be. Positive reassurance?
Just a positive reassurance. And it was also the first time when I got to the last family that I lived with was another Cuban family their son became an actor. He's Manny in Scarface, Stephen Bauer. And, he's Don Eladio and Breaking Bad. And you've seen him in lots of that. So his family took me in, and they were actually the first individuals, his family, because they were, as we say in the Latino culture, era muy dulce. They were very, loving and sweet. They were the first people to touch me in a non-violent way, and they put their hands on me and their arms around me. And I did not like it at first.
Yeah, it's a very awkward feeling.
But I realized little by little that's who I really was. So little, I always use a reference of Shrek. Shrek says, he's peeling off the layers.
Yeah, the layers of onions. Yeah,
and that was me. And it's like underneath it was a completely different person, the person that I was supposed to be. And I remember, when I got to college, I went to college on a full scholarship to play football at Florida State University, the Seminoles. But when I got to college, I was on my own studying and I was starting to make the dean's list.
Nice.
With my grades. And it's when I realized that I was actually very intelligent. I had been told
dean's
my whole
list
life
is
that I was
good.
told that I was stupid most of my life.
Yeah, the negative.
So I had to break all of that stuff. And so I think because of that intervention and because they gave me these tools and through education, it allowed me to articulate my pain without using my fist. Without being violent, and I could talk things out, and I could show emotion, and that's certainly something that we tell our, even today, maybe not as much, but still, my generation of boys, we were told you can't cry, don't be a girl, and so you're telling your boys not to show any emotion, not to allow tears to fall down their face, and so what do you think all that pent up,
it stays inside, it stays inside
until it explodes.
Do you think it's like, for me, I'm a mixed martial arts instructor. So getting people who come from violent backgrounds or that have a lot of trauma that they want ways to release aggression and stuff like that, it's very common in my sport. But to see those type of people, become emotional and stuff like that, it's a different vibe. It's a different feeling to see someone that's strong come down like that. But do you think it's okay to still have that strength to be able to tell, like a young man growing up that, hey, you know what, it's okay to be a little tough, but don't be afraid to let go a little bit, because nowadays I feel like in the culture of what it's not is, it's almost not cared for or wanted for men to be men, like to be tough, like it's okay to be a lot, what would you say, softer, I guess soft to be the thing. But I mean, in a way, it's not necessarily being soft, because like you said, I agree with it, where it's like you do need some type of outreach, some type of way to release that tension.
Right.
But is it okay still to withhold a little bit if it's controllable, if it's manageable?
So I'm going to just reverse it on you,
Yeah.
and say, so if you were talking, if we were talking to our daughters, our daughters are going to react differently. You might have, your daughter might have more so masculine than she has feminine in her. So she's a little tougher
or
whatever. But then your other daughter, who's like really soft and sweet, and a leaf falls from a tree and she cries because it's dying and whatever. So the reality is that I think all of us have we have a masculine and feminine,
yes,
in us. I mean, that's part of us. We have
it's the empathy. It's the empathy.
And so I think there are going to be those of us. Not everybody's a leader, and so most are followers. So through leadership, you create elements of strength and toughness and all these things, and you can still have empathy. And I think it's also more important to lead by example than lead by direction, telling people what to do. But I think with our boys, we're going to have boys that their toughness may show up in other ways than what we want. We think of masculinity and whatever. And this is what I tell people, because who hear me speak publicly, and especially I hope when I speak, and there'll be men in the room when I speak on issues of violence against women and violence against their children, is I think that in person, if you see me in person, I represent a big, strong, macho guy. I look like macho, like that guy. But what makes me I think a man is that, one, I respect and protect women, and also that I allow myself to show emotion when that, and yet in a situation where I have to show up, whether in toughness or bravery or courage, that's there too. That's part of the component.
Yes.
And that I can also be fearful, that I can have fear.
Yes,
and so,
that's always a good moment.
So and again, and I think that I was able to sort of experience all of that. And I would say, again, you were talking about martial arts. Athletics saved my life.
Yes.
So athletics gave me a healthy outlet for my rage. So I, especially football, because I was able to put on a helmet and I was playing. I could be as
aggressive as you want. Yeah.
But I was playing within the confines of the game.
Yes.
Same with martial arts. I mean, you can put somebody in an MMA ring, and if they try to kill somebody in the ring,
that's not allowed.
They'll never
fight again
or whatever. So there's ways that we can find ways to vent, but I also think there's different ways for us to show our toughness, and like every boy, every man doesn't have to sort of personify that, that whatever that masculine, and which is societal, tells us that you got to be a certain, maybe, but you know what? That's up to you. It's like I enjoy being a man. I enjoy that part of it. I love the differentiation in my world.
Let me get you closer to the microphone.
Differentiation in my world. When I'm in a relationship, with a female, I love that. But I'm also aware of who I am and where my emotions lie. And I think that I want our boys to, and especially our young boys and our young men, and that's the way I raised my son, to know that he can. And my son is like, he's tough and he's strong and he's smart and he's all those things, but he's also been out there teaching peace,
compassionate,
since he was 5.5 years old. He's joined me at the microphone several times in domestic violence and child abuse, and he continues to do the same. When he was at Harvard, he was involved with Harvard Men Against Rape, and so there's different ways for us to to show to be tough in our own ways, but also tough with empathy, with compassion.
Well, I think compassion is also a way of showing strength. I think compassion is a very beautiful way of a man that shows strength to show strength to others.
Right.
When you're compassionate to others, it's you being more accepting. Yeah. It's you being accepting and not faltering and just accepting everybody for who they are. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. Here with the Average Boys podcast, the podcast that I run, we're very much into the nerd scene, right? So I had a question that I wanted to ask you, and I asked you this off scene, but I want to ask you this here. You made a surprise appearance in a film once, and I even talked to Henry. Henry's the guy that's in charge of CineSol. You came out at the ending of Ang Lee's Hulk for it was like a 30-second thing. Not even, it was like a minute. I would say like a minute long. And it was so crazy because, of course, when I had seen you, I'd recognize you from, playing Magic Mike from Blood and Blood Out. And I was like, there's no way they brought him just for a couple seconds or a minute. He has to be a reoccurring role. Of course, they didn't return back to that franchise. They brought in Edward Norton's Hulk film, which I still believe they're going to return back to Eric Bana's film for the next series of phases in the Marvel Universe. But what was up with your role in that character? Were you going to be a reoccurring role? Was there an opportunity for you there in the Marvel Universe?
That certainly was, the thing that was the funniest about that whole sort of the way I got introduced to Ang Lee and everything was I got a call literally from my agent and said, you need to get over to Universal Studios now because Ang Lee wants to meet you. And I'm going for his new film. And I go, well, what is it? And they said, we can't tell you because they, you have to sign a non-disclosure agreement.
The NDA and all that good stuff.
Yeah. I was like, okay, whatever. So I get over there and it's a big, New York casting director who I have not met yet, but I know who she is. She casts tons of stuff out of New York, Woody Allen and Martin Scorsese films and whatever. And I get there, and then she hands me what is the scene, which is what you're describing.
Yeah.
It's the end. It's the ending scene of the movie, and I look at the and there's one page, and I said, do you know my work?
Yeah, because you had
and she just looked at me and harshly answered, yeah, that's why you're here. And I went, okay. And then Ang Lee comes in and into the room, and he tells me what his idea is with the scene, and he says the movie's going to end with you and the scene, and so that's what I kind of knew. When it went fade to black, I always tell people, when I speak nationally on the issues of family violence and stuff, and I always talk about all my characters, and a lot of my characters are killed because I play a lot of bad guys, so in Hollywood. Good usually triumphs over evil.
The hero's got to win.
And so I said, I had my head cut off in The Mask of Zorro, and there was this film and that film, and I said, and in the Hulk, well, let's just say I made that green guy.
Yeah, he's gonna come out and he's gonna uppercut you in his face or something.
I made him really angry. So it ends with you see me making him mad. I'm poking him physically, poking him, and you see his eyes going green, and then you go, and then it just fade to black, and I just assume. Yeah, he's dead. so I never thought I was coming back. But ultimately, when I saw how the film ended, I was really happy because that I didn't walk away from it and said, no, I can't do this, because I had the same opportunity with Steven Spielberg at the beginning of Amistad. I'm the captain of the Amistad, and I'm going to die in that opening sequence because the whole crew gets killed. And so. But it was Spielberg, and so
the opportunity to work with someone
Spielberg and Ang Lee, and I remember there's a very, very famous he's an Academy Award-winning actor named Laurence Olivier, who's done many films, and he was doing a role in something, and somebody asked him the question, but isn't that a small role? And he said, he answered in a very British way. He goes, "There are no small roles, only small actors." Yeah, and that
makes a lot of sense.
So and that's where now I did a film that these young filmmakers, Latino filmmakers actually, wanted me to be in this short film that they did called Slipping in the Darkness that was on HBO Max, and it's a 30-minute film.
Okay.
And they wrote I'm in one scene. It's the opening scene of the movie. They wanted me to be that actor. They only wrote it for me. Okay. A la Magic Mike kind of. Okay. Because I'm back in prison. and in the scene. And I read the script and I said, you know what, I want to do this. Well, they ended up winning the Latino Film Festival.
Very nice.
Not only the best short film, they were also best film of the the whole festival.
Event.
And HBO, the winner of that, HBO picks it up. HBO Latino picks up that and
makes it a series.
And also we'll give those guys like a big launch. And what ended up happening right as the launch was going to happen, COVID hit.
Rona,
and it just but they're still out there making
Good.
films, and as a matter of fact, one of my compadres from Blood and Blood Out, Jesse Borrego, is working with them right now on a film. So, but it was like I said, you know what, I want to invest my talent and into this film with these guys, because they're starting out and they're writing good stuff, and the director is like during the day the director is a cinematographer and the other guy works on sets, but they've created this company, and they're doing a lot of Latino content, and they're hiring a lot of Latino talent,
which is very important, man. I mean,
so I'm sure I'll work with them again at some point. So.
Most def. What else? I wanted to ask you about opportunities in voice acting. You've done some voice acting in the past. I know you've been doing Comic Cons recently. So you had the opportunity to play a character in a superhero franchise, one of the big two. We're talking about DC Comics. You played Hawkman in the Justice League comic book. Tell us about that.
So, I mean, actually, I prior to doing the Hawkman role, I had worked a lot on the Batman Beyonds. Oh, because it's the same casting person. Good stuff. And so and it's always amazing when when you come in, because the way that they do it is they bring, instead of just having you come voice by yourself, they'll bring all the actors for the episode in to the room. Nice. So you'll do a reading. Yeah, so you're in a reading. It's like almost like the old radio days. So you're everybody's behind a microphone, and so like if it's Justice League, you'll have the guy playing Batman, Hawkgirl, and all these different things. But when we got to the Justice League, what was incredible is that there was going to be a 3-episode arc that was going to end one of the seasons, and it was about Hawkgirl's fiance, character named Haro Talak, who comes from Hawk Planet. I forgot the name of the planet, but the actress who voices the Hawkgirl is Latina. She's actually Cuban, like I am. And so everybody from the planet, there was I think 5 of us at the microphone from the planet, we were all Latinos.
That's awesome.
And they weren't asking us to do like Latino accents.
Yeah, not the accent.
No, it was just that we have a rhythm in the way we speak, and so all of us at the microphone, Hector Elizondo, Elizabeth Peña, people that you probably have seen or heard before, we were all at the microphone and we were all Latino, and I just thought it was like brilliant, so that we all had, because we're coming from the same place, the same planet. And so that was really, really fun. And then, and again, it's really interesting when I'll go somewhere and it'll be some kid who I'll have my Blood and Blood Out pictures and my Mask of Zorro pictures, and I'll have a Hawkman, and the kid will go, "Oh my God, you're."
Yeah, and not only that, like the Justice League cartoon is probably one of the best iterations of the Justice League characters in history of the comic book franchise.
Yeah, I really enjoyed. I mean, I felt like the 3-story arc was great. It was not cartoonish. I mean,
they're pretty stern. They're pretty sturdy. Yeah, they're
real characters, but it's always hilarious because what a lot of people don't know is that you'll come in and you'll do the voice way before they get to the animation. So,
that's right. That's right.
You're not looking at. You're not trying to. Looking at trying to lip. No. So I've got especially the Batman Beyonds. I mean, I remember there was I forgot what a character was called, the Invincible Man or something like that. And I was like this blonde-haired, blue-eyed guy, and I was like, okay.
You're like, okay,
because I'm not. But it was kind of fun to see me in
a different way.
In a different way. So.
That's awesome. So, what other projects do you have coming up that you might be working on, or that you have something in the?
Well, I have a film that that's actually making the festival circuit right now to see which festivals are going to pick it up. So I did a film, like about a year and a half ago, and sort of still in COVID time because we had to get tested every day on the set and whatever. And it's a film called Clocked. and it's about a boxing family. And so I'm, the dad's it's a Puerto Rican family. I'm a former boxer. My two sons are boxers, and but it's this beautiful film that where my youngest son is undefeated. He's on his way to becoming a pro, but he's got a big problem, and that's that he feels like he's in the wrong body.
Wrong body?
Yeah, like he's supposed to be a woman.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
okay. It's a transitioning, like a transition. Wow.
So it's in a Latino family with a bunch of macho, the whole macho boxing thing. As we were talking about, machismo.
The machismo, yeah.
And so that's as much as I'll say about it. But I think it was beautifully written. And I have not seen it yet, so I'm looking forward to seeing it. It was hilarious because it was during COVID, and I think we all gained weight during COVID.
Oh yeah. It was very hard to do anything.
I'm like 35 pounds heavier in the film. And so when I looked at the picture, I went,
You're like, oh no!
I'm a big guy, so I can carry the weight, but I was heavy. But that's coming out, and then ultimately my book at the moment is we're in the midst of turning it into a limited series, and I have two executive producers that will be working with me, and we've got some. I'm not going to say names, but we have some people already sort of committed, or letters of intent wanting to attach themselves to it. Excellent. And so we'll see where that takes us. But I have really good feelings about it. That will be sometime next year to at least begin the process of, we'll sell it and then you begin the process of it. And that'll be it, because it's my story. I'll be involved in it from a lot of different aspects, not only executive producing, I'll do the voiceover because we're doing voiceover. So I'll be the voice of that you'll hear throughout.
Like a narrator and stuff?
The narrator of the story. And then I might show up at some point, but people have asked me, well, would you play your father? If it was a few years back, I would have said yes. I'm too old to play my father now. To be realistic, it's like they either try to age me down to Hollywood.
The de-aging program.
I would rather guide a
younger actor,
and maybe a prominent actor, but who's just younger. Because a lot of people are going to want to play my dad because he's such a complex character. I mean, he is a guy that, I'll give you the example of Sir Anthony Hopkins doing Hannibal.
Oh, yeah.
He could do a lot of different. He did Hannibal because those dark characters are sometimes the best, the most fun to play. Magic was a great character to play.
Well, it's very interesting because most of the times, nowadays, especially in the superhero genre, we see that a lot more of the darker style hero characters are a lot more relatable to people because of this dark nature that it's almost like the stand-up comedy world, like going up on stage and you have a comedian that does jokes with cuss words and the jokes without cuss words.
Right.
The cuss wording is always an easier way to get up on stage and get people to laugh because the fear of public speaking is already a nature of people already nervous for that person. And saying a cuss word is double entendre. Yeah. But most deaf. What else? I wanted to ask you something, and I know that it was in there. By chance, knowing how it was with your family growing up, you said that you ended up getting I wanted to go back to this. You got a restraining order against your father, but did you keep in contact with your mother and your brothers and your family, and did you keep in contact with them fairly well?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, ultimately at the time in today's world, when they would have given me a restraining order, in today's world, they'll yank all the kids out of that house and they would protect them, the mother. There was just a different time. So initially, my siblings ended up having to still stay with my father and all that. But over the years, my mom passed away several years ago, but she died at 84. So it was like she lived a full life, whatever. And so she was able to see there were 6 kids in our family. 5 survived, 1 didn't. And but all of us have broken the cycle of violence. We're all parents. Some of us are grandparents. I'm not yet, but some of my siblings are grandparents, and we've all and ended up sort of breaking that cycle, which is really rare in a family like ours. Beautiful. My mom got to see a lot of that. She got to see several of her grandchildren born. She my son met my mom, and so he's now 28. But and then the tragedy in my story is I have a brother who didn't survive, and then my father took his own life at 49. And because and this is the thing about mental illness that we don't talk about, but there's no question in my mind that yes. My father was abusive. He was all those things, but I'm sure my father had a serious mental illness because if you read my book, you'll know that when I talk about it, it's not about a man who just like has a little rage and and loses control of his hand. My dad was the most dangerous and the most deviant talking to you the way I'm talking to you right now. That calm, and so there was something else going on. And he comes from a generation where they didn't seek help, because I'll give you the example of my mom. After my mom retired from work, and we'd say, Mommy, you've been through so much, you should go talk to somebody, meaning a therapist. And she would say, no, eso para los locos. That's for the crazy people, because Dad, in her generation, if you went to see a therapist, you were going to the asylum next. So
it was like a ridicule.
So, again, for anybody listening to us, I would just say, I'm a big proponent on therapy, and certainly a lot of us, I think we all struggled over these last few years, especially when we were in isolation with COVID. And remember, when we talk about domestic violence, as we coming to an end with this, but just remember that during the time of COVID, when we were in isolation, there were a lot of people, a lot of families, especially a lot of women, that were isolated with their abusers.
Yes,
because nobody would come. Nobody to your house.
Would be able to. Yeah,
nobody could come rescue you. So a lot of us had to struggle with, I'm sure, a little bit of mental illness on different levels, just because of that isolation. Because we are a societal people. We need to be out there, social. We need to be social. So, I would just say, if I had anything to just say on the way out, is just to say, that we need to take care of each other, and I think we're forgetting. Because of COVID, we should not have forgotten so quickly, and because we're still in the midst of it. But remember how small of a world we are, because how quickly that it took off. But also that unless you happen to be sort of an uber rich person, we all got leveled.
Pretty much.
Everybody got shut down. I got shut down for 18 months, where whether it was acting, whether I do a lot of public speaking on
all of
violence,
that shut down.
All of that got shut down.
It's so crazy.
So, I think it should have humbled us a little bit to understand that we have to take care of each other. We're not promised tomorrow, so make sure that you tell someone what you feel about them.
Yeah, you live today.
And don't postpone joy. Live your life.
Victor Rivers, I want to say thank you so much for being on the show. It was such a pleasure having you. And guys, don't forget, CineSol Film Festival is going to be going on all weekend long here, Saturday and Sunday. Don't forget to come by and check it out here at the CEED Mission Event Center. Not a Mission Event Center, CEED Events, CEED Mission something, CEED. And then tomorrow night, the 36-hour film race, which is going to be on Sunday, is going to be held at the Mission Event Center on Sherry Road. Guys, thank you so much. Victor, thank you so much too. We'll see you guys. Laters.